When my wife demanded I give up my promotion so she could finally shine, I stepped aside silently. "Don't be a selfish little man," she snapped in front of my boss. 3 years later, my name was on the corner office and hers was scrubbed from the building. "Rowan, my wife, you're taking the promotion? After everything I've given up for you?" "Me? I thought we were a team." "Rowan, then support me. I need this. Don't be a selfish little man." My boss, standing nearby, awkward silence. Me nods. Walks into the meeting. Withdraws my name from the promotion. 3 years later, I'm in the corner office. Rowan is unemployed and our marriage is over. I never thought I'd be the kind of man to write one of these posts, but here I am. I guess I'm still trying to wrap my head around everything, even after all this time. And maybe I'm looking for a reality check, or maybe I just need to say it all out loud to people who won't brush it off like, well, that's marriage. I'm 45 now, living alone in a 2-bedroom condo in Chicago's West Loop. I have a good job. A great one, actually. I'm the director of operations at Caden and Roth Logistics. But this story isn't really about work. It's about what it cost me to get here and what I had to learn about the person I married. Her name is Rowan. We met when I was 31 and she was 28. I was already working at Caden and Roth back, then grinding long hours in operations, trying to stand out in a field that doesn't exactly reward flash. Rowan was magnetic. That's the only way I can describe her. Smart, quick with words, funny in that sharp-edged, look out or you'll get cut kind of way. She worked in marketing and had a resume filled with impressive names. But when we met, she was freelancing while deciding her next move. She said she wasn't the settling down type. I said I wasn't in a rush. Fast forward 2 years, and we were married. We never had kids. That was mutual at first, though I think I wanted them more than I admitted at the time. But Rowan was always clear. She didn't want to give up her independence. She said she had too much ambition to be tied down. I respected that. I admired it, even. I wanted her to succeed. What I didn't understand, what took me over a decade to figure out, is that Rowan didn't want to succeed with me. She wanted to succeed instead of me. When we got married, I was making more money. I didn't flaunt it, but I covered the bills, the mortgage, the vacations, the expensive dinners when her clients fell through. I never resented it. That's what partners do, right? You support each other through the ups and downs. I just assumed she'd do the same for me when the roles reversed. That's not what happened. 3 years ago, I was offered the opportunity I'd been working toward for over a decade, director of operations. It was everything I'd aimed for. My current boss, Samuel Kerner, called me in and said Daryl Hollings was retiring unexpectedly. He told me, "You're on the short list, Terrence. Your work ethic and leadership speak for themselves. You're the natural next step." I felt proud, not arrogant, just quietly proud that the hours and missed birthdays and constant sacrifices had been seen, recognized. That night, I brought home takeout and told Rowan the news. She barely reacted. She was scrolling through her phone. Finally, she said, "You know I'm applying for the strategic director role at Elcor, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, but it's not in the same field. My role wouldn't stop you from," she cut me off. "Terrence, if you take that job, it'll bury me. You'll be working 60-hour weeks minimum. You think I'll have time to fly out for conferences or pitch to national brands while I'm cooking your dinners and carrying the house?" I remember blinking at her, trying to figure out if I'd misheard. "I've supported you for years," she continued. "It's my turn. You always get to be the stable one, the provider, the successful one. I need this." I told her I hadn't made a decision yet, that we could figure it out together, that I wanted us both to succeed. But she didn't want both. She wanted her turn even if it came at my expense. The next Monday was the official interview day. The exec team was there. My presentation was polished. My numbers were airtight. I felt ready. That morning, as I left for work, Rowan handed me my tablet. "Don't blow it," she said, her voice light but sharp. I arrived at the office early, walked through the marble-floored lobby, past the receptionist's desk, and that's when I saw her. Rowan, standing near the elevators in heels and a blazer, like she belonged there. Like she was part of the meeting. "You forgot this," she said loudly, handing me my folder. I started to thank her quietly, but she wasn't finished. "Don't be a selfish little man, Terrence. Let someone else shine for once." My boss was 10 feet away. He looked confused. Embarrassing for me. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, took the folder, and walked inside. And at that moment, I withdrew my candidacy. Just like that. Not because she was right. Not because I agreed. But because I didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to spend my life convincing someone to see me. And the silence that followed. It was deafening. She got the job at Elcor 3 weeks later. Bigger salary than mine. Travel, prestige, the works. She celebrated alone in L.A. while I sat in our now too quiet townhouse, wondering how the heck I became invisible in my own marriage. What happened over the next year was a blur. She was barely home. When she was tired, irritable, always on her phone. She started saying things like, "You just don't get what I do," or "You're so small-minded sometimes." She'd come home from trips and dump her suitcase in the hallway, still half-packed. She stopped asking about my day. I stopped trying to tell her. Then, one day, I got a text around 2 p.m., staying in Atlanta a bit longer. I need space. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. No phone call. No explanation. Just that. I didn't reply. Instead, I got back to work. I doubled down. Stayed late. Took on problem accounts no one wanted. I didn't talk about my personal life. I just worked. And slowly, quietly, my name rose again. 16 months later, Samuel announced his departure. This time, there was no shortlist. He called me into his office and said, "You've already been doing half the job anyway. Let's make it official." I became director of operations. No fanfare. No applause. Just a quiet shift in responsibility and a corner office with a view of the lake. And I didn't tell Rowan. Months went by. She still hadn't come home, and I still hadn't reached out. Our marriage existed only on paper at that point. I didn't know where she was living, and frankly, I didn't care. I wasn't angry. Just done. Like a balloon that had been leaking slowly for years until there was nothing left inside. People at work started treating me differently. I was invited to executive lunches. I got pulled into strategic meetings with the board. I was managing more people, traveling to different branches in Milwaukee, Indianapolis, sometimes even Denver. I wasn't flashy about any of it. I still brought my own lunch most days and wore the same rotation of gray and navy suits. But the title on my door had changed, and people noticed. One Friday evening, just before closing up for the weekend, I walked into the office lobby and saw a familiar figure standing near the revolving doors. Rowan. She looked tired. Hair pulled back in a tight bun, makeup a bit heavier than I remembered. She wore a fitted black coat that looked expensive and carried a duffel bag like she'd just come from O'Hare. She didn't smile when she saw me. She just stared for a second. "Hi," she said finally. I nodded. "Hey." There was a long silence. The kind that stretches because neither person wants to go first. She finally spoke again. "Can we talk?" We ended up in a coffee shop a block away, one of those places with dim lighting and mismatched wooden chairs that tries a little too hard to feel like Brooklyn. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a paper cup, not drinking. "I lost my job," she said, without preamble. I didn't react. Elcor cut our entire team. Restructuring. They brought in an external agency to do what we were doing for half the cost. Still, I didn't say anything. "I came back to Chicago," she added. "Thought maybe we could reconnect. Talk. Try again." And there it was. Not quite an apology. Not quite a plea. Just enough openness to test the waters, to see if I was still standing on the same dock, waiting. But I wasn't. I didn't say much that night. Just listened. Let her talk. She filled the silence with stories of boardroom betrayals, last-minute flight delays, how people at Elcor had turned on her the minute the layoffs began. And then, eventually, she started asking about me. "How's work? Busy? You're still at Caden and Roth?" "Yeah." She nodded. "You like it?" I looked her right in the eye. "I do." There was a long pause before she said, "I'm glad." She came back to the townhouse the next day to grab some of her things. Most of her stuff was already gone, slowly cleared out over the course of that first year. All that was left were a few winter coats, some kitchen gadgets she never used, and a drawer of tangled cords and perfume samples in the upstairs bathroom. She didn't ask to stay. She didn't even ask to talk again. Just packed what she needed and said, "I'll be in touch." She wasn't. A few weeks later, I filed for divorce. No alimony. No fight. The prenup we'd signed years earlier, back when we were still romantic realists, held up. She didn't contest anything. Maybe she didn't have the energy. Or maybe she finally understood that I was no longer the man who'd silently stepped aside so she could have her moment. Back at work, we went through a major renovation not long after. New leadership meant new branding, new signage. Part of that process included removing the old marketing plaques in the client welcome center, design choices, tagline credits, campaign honors. Rowan's name had been on one of them. Just a small line. Brand strategy in collaboration with Rowan McAllister. Now it's gone. Scrubbed. Not out of malice. Just progress. No one asked where it went. No one remembered to. I walk by that space every morning on the way to my office. It's brighter now. The new lighting makes the wall glow. My own name is on the door upstairs. Polished. Permanent. And still, I haven't told her. Because this life I've built back doesn't belong to her anymore. It's a strange thing, learning how to be alone again after more than a decade of we. I thought it would feel lonely. And at first, it did. The townhouse echoed in the evenings, like it was reminding me of all the words that used to fill the air, some loving, some tense, but always there. But after a while, the silence stopped feeling like an absence and started feeling like peace. I started doing things differently. I signed up for a weekend cooking class downtown. Nothing fancy, just a basics of Italian cuisine series taught by a retired chef from Naples who used way too much garlic and told stories with his hands. I took early morning walks on the lakefront before work. I reconnected with an old college buddy, Leonard, who now ran his own real estate firm in Oak Brook. We'd meet for beers once a month and talk about everything and nothing. We'd both been through the ringer in different ways, and we respected each other's quiet. Work kept growing. My team tripled in size within 2 years. I promoted people I believed in, people who reminded me of who I was 10 years ago. Quiet, consistent, underestimated. At one point, during a quarterly planning session, our HR director mentioned creating an alumni network for past consultants and creatives who'd worked on major campaigns. Think Rowan McAllister, she said casually, flipping through the slide deck. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. Just nodded and moved on to the next agenda item. It was surreal to hear her name dropped so impersonally, like she was just another blip in the company's timeline. One day, I ran into her by accident. It was a late Thursday afternoon in March. I ducked into a corner cafe in Bucktown to get out of the rain. My assistant had moved a meeting at the last minute, and I had time to deal with it. I ordered a tea and sat by the window, scrolling through the daily reports on my phone. That's when she walked in. She didn't see me right away. She looked different. Not worse, just changed. Her hair was shorter now, more practical. Her makeup was minimal. She wore a raincoat over jeans and boots, far more casual than I'd ever seen her outside of Sundays. She walked to the counter, ordered, then turned and spotted me. Our eyes locked for maybe a second too long. She gave me a small nod. Not a wave, just a nod, like we were two neighbors crossing paths in the grocery store. I returned the gesture. She didn't approach. She didn't smile. She just took her drink and left. And weirdly, that moment felt more intimate than anything we'd shared in our final year together. Because there was no performance, no power play, no veiled digs or forced pleasantries. Just two people who used to be everything to each other, now reduced to a nod in a coffee shop. I sat there for a long time after she left, watching the rain slide down the window, thinking about how much energy I had spent over the years trying to hold up something that only one of us believed in. We weren't partners. We were participants in the same performance, except she was waiting for applause, and I was backstage cleaning up the mess. When I got back to the office that evening, the cleaners were in the hallway outside my door, buffing the floors. My nameplate on the door caught the overhead light, T. McAllister, Director of Operations. I stood there for a moment, looking at it. Not out of pride, out of peace. Not because I had something she didn't, but because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Not to Rowan, not to my coworkers, not to myself. I'd simply done the work. Silently, consistently. And now the silence felt like mine. After that chance encounter at the cafe, I didn't see Rowan again for a while. But I heard about her. It's funny how you don't go looking, but the universe drops breadcrumbs anyway. A former colleague of hers, a woman named Yasmin who now freelanced with our marketing team, mentioned her one afternoon in passing. Did you hear what happened to Rowan McAllister? She asked, as we reviewed a presentation draft. I didn't react, just kept my eyes on the slides. Last I heard, she was consulting in L.A., right? Someone else in the room asked. Yasmin shook her head. She was, but apparently she burned some bridges out there. A few agencies dropped her. Word got around she was tough to work with, too critical, not a team player. Real shame. She's talented, but... She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. That night, I went home and found myself sitting on the edge of the bed, the same bed we used to share, though I'd replaced the sheets and mattress long ago. I thought about how often I'd try to tell Rowan she was enough. That she didn't have to prove her brilliance at every turn. That she didn't need to step on people to stand out. But I realized then that it wouldn't have mattered. Because it wasn't about me. It never had been. Her war wasn't with me. It was with herself. I just happened to be on the battlefield. I started making changes after that. Not dramatic ones, just small, personal adjustments. I sold the townhouse. It was too big, too empty, too full of echoes I didn't want to hear anymore. I moved into a condo in a quieter neighborhood, somewhere close enough to the lake that I could walk there before work. I got a dog, a senior golden retriever named Max, adopted from a local shelter. He followed me everywhere, like he'd been waiting for me this whole time. At night, he curled up by the foot of the bed, letting out these content little sighs like he was finally at peace. We were two middle-aged guys learning to breathe again. And still, Rowan lingered. Not in my space, but in memory. In patterns. In questions. Sometimes I'd be driving to work and remember a moment from our early years, her humming while chopping onions, or laughing too hard at one of my terrible dad jokes. For a few seconds, I'd feel that familiar warmth, like I was visiting a place I used to live. But I didn't miss it. I missed who I was before I had to shrink to fit her shadow. That's the thing no one tells you about long relationships that break down slowly. It's not the big fights that do the most damage. It's the quiet compromises. The times you bite your tongue. The moments you dim yourself to let them shine. You do it enough, and one day you wake up in a house full of lights, but none of them are on for you. I didn't blame her. Not really. Not anymore. She was who she was. And I was who I became in reaction to her. But now, finally, I am becoming someone on my own terms. About a year after the cafe encounter, I got an email. Subject line, coffee. Sender, rowan.mcallister@gmail.com, no message body. Just that one-word subject line. I stared at it for a long time. I hadn't heard from her since the divorce finalized. No calls. No questions. No drama. Just silence. And now here she was, showing up again like a knock on a door I thought I'd bricked up. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit. 2 days later, she sent another message. This one had actual content. I've been thinking a lot. I'd like to talk if you're open to it. Just talk. No expectations. I showed it to Leonard over lunch that weekend. He raised an eyebrow, stirred his coffee. You gonna go? I don't know, I said. She doesn't deserve closure. No, he said. But maybe you do. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe on Wabash, same block where we used to go during her brief consulting stint with my company years ago. There was a familiarity to it that made the whole thing feel like a mirror of our past, but reversed. Now I was the one with the full schedule, the title, the responsibility. She was trying to find footing. She looked thinner, not in a sickly way, just worn. Like life had finally made her slow down. Thanks for coming, she said. I nodded. We sat in silence for a while before she finally said it. You were right, she said. About a lot of things. I didn't answer. Just wait. I thought success would feel like power. Like respect. But it didn't. It felt like spinning plates. And when it all fell apart, I realized I'd spent so long trying to win that I didn't even know what I was fighting for. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in years, I felt nothing. No heat in my chest. No twist in my stomach. Just a clear, open space where all the chaos used to be. I'm sorry, she said. I nodded. I know. There was another silence. Then she smiled, soft and hesitant. I heard you're heading up the regional expansion. I blinked. You've been keeping tabs? She shrugged. It's hard not to. People still talk. You're respected now. And not just for your work. They say you lead quietly, but people follow. I didn't respond to that. I didn't need to. She leaned forward slightly. I've been thinking about getting back into consulting. Maybe a small business strategy. I'd love to pitch a proposal to Caden and Roth someday. Not now, but eventually. There it was. The reason she really wanted coffee. Not to reconnect. Not to apologize. But to see if the man she left behind would open a door for her now that she needed one. And here's the thing, I wasn't angry. I wasn't hurt. I was just done. So I smiled, took a sip of my tea, and said, Rowan, I think it's best we both move on in our own directions. She looked surprised, but only for a second. She nodded slowly, like she'd expected it. Or maybe like she knew she'd earned it. We finished our drinks in silence. When we stood, she didn't ask for a hug. I didn't offer one. She just said, Take care, Terrence. You too. And that was it. She walked out of the cafe and into the street. No music swelled. No dramatic final look over the shoulder. Just the soft click of her heels fading into the hum of city traffic. I watched her go, then turned back to the counter and ordered a cookie to go. Because I could. Because I wanted one. Because I wasn't carrying anyone else's dreams anymore. And as I walked back to my office, with my name on the glass and a team I built from the ground up, I realized the revenge wasn't in what she lost. It was in what I gained without her. A life I didn't have to dim myself to keep. A legacy that didn't need her name attached. And the peace of knowing that I didn't have to shout, or punish, or gloat, to win. I just had to keep walking. And I never stopped.